Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to create pressure activated switches in Unreal Engine with C++. So essentially what this will be is we'll have the player stand on the switch and the door move upwards, and as soon as the player goes off that switch, the door will go back down. And we'll also add in so you can put physics based objects on the switches, so then that activates the switch and the door will go up and down. It's very Portal like esque slash Indiana Jones-esque. So let's jump into it. I created this project as a third-person template using C++ and called it Pressure. The first thing you're going to want to do is click on All. Then you want to go to C++ classes, click on Pressure, and then I'll have here a right-click, New C++ class, and go all the way to the bottom because we're going to create an interface. So it's an Unreal interface. Let's call that Interact interface. So Interact interface. In the public of Interact interface, we're going to have two U functions. It's going to be blueprint callable, blueprint native event. We're going to need two of these. First one's going to be interact. Void start interact, interact. And the second one is going to be end interact. So void end interact. There we go, sorry, I couldn't type there. Perfect. So now we'll go back into Unreal Engine and we want to create a C++ class for the pressure plate. So this is the pressure plate is the switch. So let's create an actor. I'm just going to call this pressure switch. So in here, we've got a begin player, that's perfect. We need to add a uScene component, a box component, a static mesh component, and have two static mesh components. So the first thing we need is a U property for these. These will be edit anywhere, blueprint read write. I'm going to put under the category pressure switch. Also, we want meta allow private access is true. Perfect. So the first one's a T object pointer. This will be uScene component. And we'll just call this scene component. Perfect, just there. I'm going to duplicate the U property. Actually, you need it 4 times, so I'm going to do that now. One more. That's all done. Got more spaced out. In here, we need another T object pointer. And this will be the U box component. It's what you'll collide with. So U box component, box collision. Perfect. Let's right click, show context. And we'll have forward declaration for this one. Need another T object pointer. These are both going to be the same. And this will be the static mesh. T object pointer, use static mesh components. And we're going to call this switch base. And just copy that. The next one, we're just going to call it switch because there's switch on the base that goes up and down. Perfect. We need to add the interact interface to this class. So let's add a public up top here, and it's the interact interface. Perfect. Now we can call the functions we've created. So start interact implementation. Then we need end interact implementation. So we've got them two functions. And then we also need the on overlap and end overlap functions. So I've already got these signatures. These are the standard ones you have in blueprints. So I've got these for C++ just here. If you want to just copy. Pause the video at any time to copy. Alright, I've got them. And we need a private section finally for this bit. I'm going to have a U property. No values inside the U property. And then we need a bool. And we call this B. Switch is down. So this basically is saying we're stood on the switch, and we just need to make a U property for the future. We haven't got all the code right now, but this will be an F vector and the move location, how much the switch goes up and down. So equals F vector. And from when I've tested in the past, because I usually test before I make these videos, I found -50 is pretty good. In here, I'm going to put it as edit anywhere and blueprint read write, just because if I want to edit it, I don't have to live code every time. So I've moved it to protected so I can edit it. That's perfect. That's the pressure plate, sorry, the pressure switch, all done. Right, let's create these classes. Generate definitions. Okay. Alright, we need to do the usual constructor, so I am going to copy and paste because this will be a long video if I don't. So, give me one moment. Right, so I've added these in on the constructor. You've got scene component, set that to the root component. Then you've done box collision, set up attachment to the scene component. Same with the switch base. And then with the switch, we're setting that up attachment to the switch base. Also, we have red squiggly lines here because UBox component hasn't got its include. So if you include the definition up here, it's include component / box component.h. Perfect. Just copy and paste these in. If I'm writing these out all the time, it'll be a very long video. And I'm assuming you want me to get to the point as quick as possible. Perfect. Right, with the box collision, we're going to set up some collision. So box collision, we're going to do on component begin overlap. Then we're going to do dot add unique dynamic. And put this. And then we're going to do a pressure switch record on overlap. And then we're going to do the same again for when we end the overlap, but change begin on components begin overlap to on components end overlap. And that'll be on end overlap. There's not going to be that much code in this for the minute, but I'm just trying to get it all set up. Inside the on overlap, here we're only handling physics-based objects. So if no, we don't want that. So we want other component is simulating physics. And in the future, we want this to do something. So copy, put it in there. We want the same, paste. If this is the other one's on comp, not component, other component, sorry. And there. That's the pressure switch all done. So let's go into blueprints now, live code, and create the switch. Live coding was complete. I'm going to right click on pressure switch in C++ classes and click create blueprint based on pressure switch. So I'm going to call this BP pressure switch. Perfect. I'm going to put it in the content folder just for now. So what I'm going to do here for the switch base, let's find a cube. And we're just going to edit that cube. That cube will be perfect. Let's make it a bit smaller. Let's change all these values. Snap size 1. This could be 5. And that can be like 0.1. Let's edit it now. Perfect. There we go. About there. Let's change the color. Type in basic. Should come up with a basic material. Or MI cube actually. Perfect. We'll have it yellow. Then we want the same. So we want cube, and then on this one here, just compile so we can get the materials. Let's just type in cube here. See if that helps. Yes, perfect. What we need to do here is make this a little smaller, like there. We'll start it off there, and when oh, sorry about that. When it goes down, you'll be able to tell it's gone down. You've clicked on the pressure switch. Okay, pressure plate, same thing. Collision box, we don't need that big. Realistically, about there. That's perfect. That's a pressure switch all done. Let's create the door that goes up and down. Back to C++ classes, pressure, right click, new class, actor, just call it door, because that's what all it'll be. This door will be going up and down. Create. Right, door's been created, perfect. What we need now is some functions. The first one's going to be a U function on public, and it's going to be called void toggle door. Toggle door open or closed. And it's going to take a parameter of a bool and call this be open. Perfect. In the protected section underneath begin play, we need to make a UScene component and a UStatic mesh component. So where's our switch? Let's steal all this up here, copy that, go to here, paste it, change the category to door. Perfect, and we need 2 of them for the UStatic mesh components. We'll be lazy again, take that bit, back to door, paste that in. We need the UScene component, that's correct. And this one is going to be the UStatic mesh component. And let's call this door mesh. Perfect. Underneath this, we need a U property for a variable. It's going to be a bool called B. Door is open. Or door open, make it shorter. And we're going to equal that to false, so it should be open straight away. Perfect. Then we need another U property. We need the move location like we did on the previous one, because we're going to be moving this as well. Actually, we'll just copy the last one. Be a lot quicker. We want to be able to edit the door one as well, so let's just copy paste it all in. From what I've checked from my previous video, to go up about 400 is perfect. And then we'll just call it door in the category. Perfect. Perfect, that's the H done for the door. Let's jump into the CPP. I'm just gonna copy and paste into the constructor. Like I said, so it's not a long video. I'll just show you me copy and pasting, that's fine. And what did I call this? Door mesh. Perfect. Door mesh. Door mesh over here. This is one I've tested it previously. Perfect. Let's create the toggle door as well while we're here. Toggle door wants to go below begin play. Perfect. And in here we'll have if be open, then we'll be putting some code in there. Open should be true. No, this is no, if not open, that'll be true. Open the door, sorry about that. And then else will be if it is true, then we'll say it to false again. And it'll run some code in here to open the door and shut it. Perfect. So now what we do need to make is an actor component, which is going to make both of these, the pressure switch and the door, go up and down. I've done it this way. I don't want to put the same code in both classes, so I've created an actor component and we'll just call the actor component on both classes. So let's jump into Unreal Engine. Let's right click, new C++ class. Scroll down a little bit to here, actor component. And this actor component, we'll call it movable component. So basically we can move the stuff that it's on. So in the H, let's create some variables. So the first variable we need is a U property, as usual. And this will be the timeline. So T object pointer. Sorry, let's knock it to the next line. And this will be U timeline components. So I think most of you might know what timelines are from blueprints. We're going to be using that through C++. So we're going to call this timeline component. Take off timeline comp, actually sounds a little bit shorter. Perfect. Then we need a U property, and then we need a edit anywhere, and we need a blueprint read write. This is for the float curve that we need to create. U curve float, sorry. U curve float. I'm going to call it float curve, because it's going to be a float curve we create in blueprints. Perfect. We also need to make another U property, and this will be an F on timeline float. Then we need to see how far we are on the timeline float. Perfect. And we'll call this timeline progress. There we go. Let me just right click that and include definition. That's perfect. We need a function to handle the progress. So we're going to call it void handle timeline progress. Perfect. And that's going to take in a value of float called value. Perfect. So after that, we need two F vectors, view property, F vector, object, start location, start lock we'll call it. And then we need the same again for end. So I'll just copy that, copy paste, and then we'll change start to end. And then the last one we need is a U property, U static mesh. No, not a U property, U static mesh. Underneath we need a T object pointer, U static mesh component. Perfect. And we'll call this timeline mesh. Perfect. That's the protected values. We do need a couple of getters. Sorry, a couple of setters. So up top, we're going to have a U function. We'll have 4. We'll have 4 here. Let's create 4 at the same time. Force inline. These will be void set object start location. And inside here, we want to pass by const reference. Const reference of a F vector. We'll call it new start location. And then we'll call object start location equals new start location. Perfect. Let's jump on to the next one, which is going to be another force inline. And this will be set timeline play. So we're just calling play on the timeline. Set timeline play. Const. And this will be calling the timeline component and calling play on that. Perfect. I'm going to do the same but in reverse for another setter. So copied and pasted, reverse. Here be reverse. Perfect. The last function I'm going to create now is not a force inline, it's going to be a void. I'm going to initialize this component. Init comp I'm going to call, and I'm going to pass in the U static mesh, or the static mesh that we want on the door and the pressure switch, what the mesh is. That's going to be a pointer. I'm going to call this mesh component. And then we also need to pass in the timeline vector. So how much it goes up and down. So we've got that move location. We're going to pass that in to see how much that static mesh goes up and down. So this will be a const F vector, and it's going to be a reference, const reference, sorry. I'm going to call this timeline vector. That's perfect. What does it not like here? Do it on capital C, like that? Yeah. Let's create these two functions. Generate definition. Don't want it above begin play. And then CPP. No, I'm on the wrong thing there. Movable component. Let's create handle time progress. Perfect. Let's jump into them both. Just at the top, we need to create the timeline component. Timeline component equals create default subobject. Must be U timeline component. Text. I'm going to call it. Text is supposed to be inside brackets. Timeline comp. Perfect. Inside begin play, we're going to put if float curve. That's true. I'm going to have timeline progress. Dot find U function. This. And then it's going to be called. I'm going to have f name brackets around that, and it'll be handle timeline progress. I've spelled handle timeline progress wrong. I've just noticed. Yeah, handle looks better there. Perfect. And then in here with timeline progress. Sorry, in timeline comp, you want to add an interp. Add interp float. Pass in the float curve and timeline progress. And then timeline comp, we want to set the looping to false, so it only does it when it's activated. Set looping, and that'll be false. Right, let's initialize our timeline. So get timeline mesh equal that. Oh, well, this is supposed to be in this class. I'm gonna put this one higher. This is the initialization. Equals mesh comp. So the one we pass in is the one we'll be moving up and down on the timeline. The object start location down there will equal timeline mesh, and then we're going to get the relative location. Get relative location. Perfect. And then the object end location is going to just be the timeline vector. Perfect. Now on the handle timeline progress, let's just create a little float called out value, and then equal that to the float curve. And let's say get float value, and passing in value, and then we want to lerp it. So we need an f vector. I'm going to put lerp location, lerp lock equals f map lerp. Sorry about that. I need a capital M on f map lerp, and then passing in the object start location and location out value. And then what we do finally is put timeline mesh, and then we set the relative location for the mesh to the lerp location. Perfect. So that should make our objects going up and down. So what we want to do now is add them to it. So in pressure switch, we want to create, and we want another one of these up top, duplicated it, another U property done there, and then here we want another T object pointer to the component we've just created, and that component is called a U movable component. Forward declare it, and we'll just call it movable comp. Perfect. While we're in the pressure switch, we do want a reference to our door, so we're going to create a U property, edit anywhere, blueprint read write. We don't need the category. Oh, we could have the category actually. Yeah, we'll have it there, and we need to have a pointer to the door, so we're going to have a T weak pointer, T weak object pointer, sorry, and this will be a door. We'll declare that, we'll call it door. That's perfect. So in switch CPP, all we want to do is to create a timeline component. Not timeline component, we use timeline component. There we go, movable component. Movable comp equals create default subobject, and then this is a U movable component, text, and then call it movable comp. That's perfect there. So inside begin play, we want to initialize it. So I'm going to initialize it for the begin overlaps. So timeline comp, no, movable comp, sorry. So movable comp in begin play, and that'll equal create, no, that'll be initialize the component. So init comp, and we're going to be passing in the switch and the move location. Perfect. So now on start interact, we can call two functions. The first one's going to be movable comp, and that'll be set timeline play. And then we can also use the door, where we're going to get toggle door and set that to true. We have exactly the same on here on the next one, but changed. So this on end interact, we're going to call reverse, and this pass in false. We want to copy and paste into here, which is true, and then we want to copy and paste that one into false. Perfect. Now for the door, we're going to jump straight into the door. So door, we need a timeline component on the door. So we'll just copy the one we got from the pressure switch up here. Copy that, go to door, door H, put it underneath door mesh. Perfect. We just need to include so just to forward declare the class, and then we also need to declare it in the door CPP like we've done on the switch. So let's just copy that as well again, copy that there, CPP. Being really lazy, copy and pasting, but makes it a lot quicker of a video. And then we need to initialize it as well, like we've done in the CPP. Let's just copy that, and then there we go. I'm going to change that to door mesh. Perfect, so we're initializing, passing in the door mesh and the F vector move location. So what we're going to do now is do exactly the same we've done here. Is set play, and then set it to be in here, play, and then set reverse. Perfect, all done. Let's jump into the character and do the overlap event for when the character stands on the pressure switch. So, character, we need the begin play in here. Begin play, perfect. Let's just create that. That's created. Back to the H. We need those overlap and overlap functions, so I'm going to copy and paste again. If we get them from the switch, right here, copy paste, and there's character back there. We'll put it in protected section. There we go. Let's paste. Let's create these functions. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know what I do here. Do it time in, time out. First off, we're going to go begin play, get the capsule components, and then we're going to do on component begin overlap, and then we're going to do dot add unique dynamic, and then we'll do this, a reference to the A pressure character, and this be on character overlap, on overlap, sorry. There we go. Forgot to put the comma after this, that's why it's come up with a bug there. Duplicate it, end overlap, and then on end overlap, just there. That's perfect. We're not passing the player controller or the character, so we don't really need to do anything massive here. But we're going to get the T object pointer for A pressure switch, call it switch, and then we're going to do cast to a pressure switch other actor. The other actor is a pressure switch class, then that'll be correct. And then we'll do if LukekTutorials system library, just there, and then we're going to do does it implement the interface, and then we'll pass in the switch, and then we need the U interact interface. Sorry, it's not I. U interact. Where is it? Interact interface. We only get the static class. Caps lock has clearly just been stuck on there. Really annoying. Sorry about that. Interface. I interface. We need next. We don't want that. We want execute. Where is it? Execute. Start interact. Passing in the switch. Perfect. We do exactly the same for end overlap. Let's paste there and do end interact. Perfect. That looks all good. So let's just go and test it out on the character. So let's go into Unreal Engine. Let's live code. We haven't created the door yet, so what we want to do is right click on door, create blueprint class. Call this BP door. That's for the door mesh. I'm just going to be lazy and use a cube. Compile so we can change this. Let's say basic. What basic color could we use? Perfect. Let's do it dead thin and then have it long like that. Theoretically, let's just, I want to drag this. Actually, we'll do it on that side. Which way is the character facing that way? See it straight away. I'm going to pull this here over there. Let's make that smaller. So we're just going to create like a little doorway. Let's duplicate that. Let's drag the door in. Let's check the size of the door because that does look a bit small. So I'm going to make the door scale on all sizes by 2. Perfect. Right there, we've got the door. Let's just get in the right position. Perfect. Obviously I know you can run around this door. I'm not creating the actual perfect level design here. But yeah, we want a pressure plate. Sorry about that. With our T-weak object pointer, we do need to pick actor from scene and just pick this door and it'll affect that actor. That's perfect. So, we've got that working perfect. We check the movable component. We need to make a float curve. How we make a float curve is we right click, miscellaneous, go to curve, click on curve float, and we'll call this timeline curve, I'm going to call it. If we're using U timeline, curve. Right, so what we want here is go from 0, 0, let's add a key there, and we right click here, click add key. Oh, we should have clicked on the bottom add line, I did that wrong, sorry about that. And then it should be 1, 1, we want it 0, 0, 1, 1. Obviously, you got the time. I think times across, and value is up to 1 is there. So you could have it like in half a second. You want it to do really quick, so we'll have it there. So you can create multiple float curves for each different clash you have. So obviously we have the door, we have the switch. So we need to add them in here on the movable component. So we just put timeline curve. Should come up perfectly there. Need to do the same for the pressure switch. So we're going to do timeline curve. Perfect, got that there. So that's timeline curve done. I think that's everything, so let's test it out. Should work. Somehow I've got this the wrong way round, so let's just check. So yeah, I've just found a little bug. I had set timeline reverse and play in the wrong order. So reverse is supposed to be in the if, and play is supposed to be in the else. Small little bug by me, sorry about that. Also, I am noticing when you stand on the platform it goes down too low. So let's change that. Right, so I've made the switch a bit thicker so it stands out a bit more. And I put it to like -1 on the move location. That looks perfect. The door goes up, the door goes down. You can never get through. So what we want next is to add in, let's create a cube, well, not create a cube, let's get a cube. So click on all, get cube. There's a cube here. We don't want it that big. Jesus, that's massive. Right. We want this cube to simulate physics, and we also want it to be able to generate overlap events. So the code we did here in the pressure switch, it says is other component simulated physics. If it's true, it'll set play. That's perfect. So let's test that out, see if it works. So we've got the cube here. Let's put the cube on it. Can't flip the cube, maybe make it a bit smaller. The cube will be about 0.25. Perfect. So let's see if we can get under the door with this cube here. I think that's a bit too small. So gently push it towards there. What would be cool is if we could use one of my other videos where it's how you interact with objects, like to pick them up. You can pick it up and drop it on there, and we can get through here perfectly. But let's say we have 2 switches and we want to have both switches to open a door. So inside the door we have 2 variables. First one's going to be a U property, of course. It's going to be int32. It's going to be switches activated. So how many have been activated? And we'll set that to 0 from the start. And then we'll have a U property. We're going to have this one, edit anywhere, blueprint read write, so we can change it in blueprints. There's an int32, switches for activation. So this is to activate the door. I'm just going to set it for 2 at the minute. That's perfect. Let's go into the CPP, add some code into this CPP here. So what we want, first off, we move that to open, and then move this code down into here, and that one up here. So what we're going to do first is check. So if we want to try and open it, if bdoor open is not true, so exclamation mark at the start. If it's not true, we want to do switches activated ++, so to add 1, and then we want to check if switches activated is equal to switches for activation, so how many ever we need, and we put the code in here. So what with the code in here, this will be true. I've actually had this in the wrong order, I've just realised, sorry about that. But and then in the next one we essentially want the same in a way, so we'll just edit that. So if bdoor is open is true, we want switches activated minus, and then we'll check if it's less than that, then reverse and false. Let's move that up. Perfect. Save that. Now let's jump in back into Unreal Engine and live code. Live coding was complete. Perfect. Let's grab another switch in the world. Get the door. Perfect. We've got that there. So we need two things on the door. We can have 2 cubes or a cube and a person. So if we stand on one, switch goes down, does nothing. Right, so I've made another small bug. Inside the else statement, the first thing that you want to call is switches activated minus. So that means they've left the switch. So no matter what, you should always take 1 off switches activated when you leave the switch, if the door is open or not. So just move that up. That was a little mistake by me, I apologise. But yeah, that's live code. So let's test it. We've got 1 switch, the other switch. No, 1 open. We need 2 things on each switch, a person and a cube potentially. So, ooh, almost had it there. That should work, and it opens. Right, let's have 2 cubes in the world. So let's just duplicate that, and we want to push them both onto it. Let's try with 2 cubes. Right, push this one on. That one's on. Perfect. Let's get the other one on. Oh, we've seen it glitch. Oh, I had it on for a second. There we go, perfect. That is how to create pressure activated switches in Unreal Engine with C++. If you did like that video, please give it a like, comment and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, goodbye.